Today starts when a radiant young woman goes out to have a good time, and it's never seen or heard from again, posing one giant question when the most crucial piece of evidence is missing. What does it take to pursue justice and prove a murder? This is the story of Gina Hall in the summer of 1980. A young woman named Gina Hall is loving college life at Radford University. Instead of going home for the summer, she's decided to stay in Radford and take summer classes for her grad program. And best of all, she's sharing an apartment with her younger sister, Gina, who's 18 and a freshman nursing student. Delana and Gina are more than best friends. They've always been super close. They're both excited to have this time together and live somewhere that's got a little bit more of a city feel than they get back in their hometown of Courtroom, Virginia. On Saturday, June 28th, after both Delana and Gina finish up their summer midterms, Gina decides that she wants to go dancing to celebrate being done with exams. Gina loves dancing and, like saying, the packed floor of a nightclub is Gina's happy place. And she's really looking forward to letting off some steam at the Blacksburg Marriott about a half-hour away. And basically, it's this club inside this hotel, and it's in the city of Blacksburg. So it's like the best dancing spot around. Of course, Gina asked Delina to go, but she says no. She wants to just kind of has a quiet night at home. Delana watches Gina do her makeup and get dressed. After Gina leaves, Delana has her quiet night in and goes to bed. Then, at around 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning, she gets a strange phone call, and it's Gina on the other end of the line. And Gina sounds off. According to Ron Peterson's Jr.'s book Under the Trestle, Gina sounds nervous, and kind of uneasy, like something is wrong, that frazzled. And she tells Delana that she's out at this lake with a guy named Steve, but she doesn't really give any more details about that or him or anything else. Delana manages to fall back asleep after this crazy phone call. Something's wrong. It wasn't a call that you were. I have to leave my house right now. I guess Delana should have left the house right away. But when she wakes up on Sunday morning, the first thing she does is go to Gina's bedroom to check on her. But Gina isn't there, and the car is not outside either. And so now, with that call replaying in her head, Delana is starting to worry because it's super out of character for Gina to stay out at night, especially without calling somebody to let them know where she was. Even in the days before cell phones, Gina was great about checking in with her family and friends, so they always knew where she was and one of Gina's friends. This guy named Greg, who she's kind of got this long-distance relationship with, actually comes over to the apartment while Delana is trying to figure out what to do next. But once Delana tells him what's going on, he agrees with her right away, like this isn't Gina. Something is wrong. Gina isn't known for doing casual hookups because of how self-conscious she is about her body. You see, when she was a toddler, Gina got really badly burned in an accident that left her with like a bunch of third-degree burn scars and skin grafts. Like all over her body. She had multiple surgeries throughout her childhood, so she had a lot of scarring, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. She was a beautiful girl, but it is something that her sister points out. She says she's always been worried about how a potential partner would react to seeing them. She's really nervous at the thought of any physical relationship, and she didn't want her scars ever to impact that. Yes, she was probably physical, but not on the first night meeting somebody at a bar. Her sister thinks the odds of her putting herself out there like that with a stranger are slim to pretty much none. So at this point, Delana pretty much knows that something is up, and she manages to round up a bunch of friends to start searching. They spend all morning and all afternoon going all over town, looking for Gina. But there's no trace of her anywhere, and Delana is getting more freaked out. As the day goes on, she's terrified that Gina might have gotten into maybe an accident like driving on backcountry roads or something because the roads are narrow and all twisty up in the mountains. It's even harder to navigate when it's dark outside. Finally, after a full day of searching and finding nothing, Delana calls the Radford police on Sunday night to report Gina missing. But the Radford police won't let her file the report because Gina has been missing for less than 24 hours. So Delana tries the Virginia State Police, and she's beyond frustrated when they tell her the same thing. But she refuses to give up. On Monday morning, Delana and Gina's dad, John, make the 3-hour drive from their hometown in Coburn to Radford. He is actually able to file the report and have Gina officially listed as a missing person. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Delana was unwilling to sit back and wait for the police. She wants the whole region to know Gina's missing to keep an eye out for her, and she thinks she knows just how to get the word out. She calls up one of the area's biggest radio stations, K92 FM, and asks them to tell their listeners about Gina. But kind of unsurprisingly, the station tells her, "We're sorry for what you're going through, but we get requests like this all the time, and if we do, one will have to do all of them," which to a certain extent, kind of makes sense. Delana, instead of taking no for an answer, she does what I think any of us big sisters would do in her shoes. She borrows a car because Gina took hers the night she vanished. And she makes the hour-long drive to Roanoke to talk to the radio people in person. Let me see the manager move. I would ever approve up. It works. K92 FM agrees to run a 30-second twice an hour with the description of Gina asking for anyone with information about where she might be to please call the Radford Police Department. The volunteer search efforts are still going strong all over the Radford area. A bunch of people makes the 3-hour drive from the Hall's home to help search for her. And they're going door to door with flyers. They're going all over the Radford University campus. A couple of them go back to the nightclub, and they even go over the Virginia Tech campuses to see if anyone from members seeing Gina. Till now, police are not involved in that search at all. I also read that they talked to Greg that same day to rule him out as a person of interest. But it's not the police's efforts that actually turn up the first lead. Guys who know Gina from back home find the car she was driving Saturday night, parked under a railroad bridge on the side of Hazel Hollow Road across the county line in Pulaski County. Now, when they find the car, the trunk is open, the door pull strap on the driver's side door somehow got torn off, and strangest of all, the driver's seat is pushed all the way back. According to court documents, Gina's only 5 feet tall, and everyone knows that she always drives with the seat pulled way up, never pushed back like this. So that's the first thing that came to mind, she could not have driven that car. Not only would it not have been comfortable, but she physically could not have reached the paddle. Now one of the friends stays with the car while the other one rushes to tell the police. As soon as law enforcement gets on the scene, officers look in the trunk, and suddenly they're missing persons. The case takes a much darker turn. Police find blood, head hair, and pubic hair in the trunk of Gina's car, even though they haven't actually found any trace of Gina herself. Police are now dealing with the possibility that something terrible has happened to her. Going back to the call that Gina made to Delana 3, she said she was near a lake. Is the car found anywhere nearby that lake? So it's about 3 miles away from Claytor Lake, and the road that the car was found on actually runs parallel to the New River. And Claytor Lake is a reservoir of the New River. And it's the only lake around. So they're all kind of connected, but also different. But basically, with the call-in based on where her car is found, the only inference police can really make is they think that the lake has to be the one that was her last known location. The rest of that day is spent processing the car's scene while searches continue for Gina. But it wouldn't be until the next day that police would get another break. They get a phone call from a man named Steve Early, and he tells them that he was with Gina the night she disappeared. According to Murder PDA. When he comes in for an interview, Steve tells police that he was at the Blacksburg Marriott nightclub on June 28 with his good friend Bill King and a handful of other buddies. He says he'd never met Gina before, but they clicked pretty well that night. So they danced together for about 4 or 5 songs. And as the night wore on, he invited Gina to come back to Bill's parents' house on Claytor Lake. According to Steve, he offered to drive since he knew how to get there. So he says he's the one who drove the Chevy, not Gina. He says he knows Gina called her sister, and then after that, he did try to put the moves on her. But Gina said no. Steve tells police that they left the lake house about 4 o'clock in the morning and that the last time he saw Gina was when she dropped him off at his parents' house where he lives. In the conversation, Steve also mentions that while he was out of the lake, his house, his friend Bill had come over with a woman sometime between 3:45 or 4 that morning. So really shortly before he and Gina left. And he's cautious about saying that Bill, in his companion, saw Gina and had a little conversation with her when he left with Gina. According to Steve's story, Bill and his friend were still there. Something about Steve's story doesn't sit quite right with the police, and the more they learn about him, the stronger that feeling gets. Steve's from Radford. And since it's a small, close-knit community, there are actually people on the force who know him or his family. And they all say the same thing. Steve's got a violent streak. There's gossip about him getting into bad bar fights, memories of the police having to intervene in domestic disputes that he'd have with his family, and allegations of him being really aggressive towards women. Like we're talking about dating violence, but does he have any criminal record? Well, he doesn't have a criminal record beyond traffic violations. Still, according to the Newsleader newspaper, Steve's been charged with rape in the past, not once, but twice, and in both incidents, he's allegedly tricked the victims into being alone with him. So Steve is looking like a pretty strong person of interest to police at this point. The next day, the police can talk to Steve's friend Bill. Since Steve put Bill at the house the night Gina went missing, obviously, they want to see what his version of events is. Bill tells them something exciting. He corroborates Steve's story about meeting Gina at the club, and he says that he did see Gina's car parked out front when he got to the lake house with a girl named Robin. So far, everything sounds pretty much the same. But Bill tells them a fascinating detail. He says that when he walked into the first floor, then, he stepped in something wet on the carpet. Bill didn't think anything of it at the time. He figured Steve and Gina probably went for a little late-night swim in the lake, maybe, and trailed some water into the house like no big deal. No reason for him to turn on the lights and check out what it was and risk interrupting whatever Steve and Gina might be getting up. So Bill and Steve have actually been friends since they were little kids. So Steve got this open invitation to the house. So he could come over any time. Once he can even use the house to hook up after a night out. Now, Bill tells police that he was there outside of the club when Steve and Gina were making plans to head out to his lake house. But as I read in some court records, Bill says, Gina seemed confused about what was going on. More like she didn't know who else was gonna go to the lake house. And, who was taking what car there. She seemed to think that a group would be there, not that she'd be there alone was. Whatever Bill saw, it made him recognize that Gina wasn't going there to hook up with Steve. She thought something else was going on, and it felt more. She was expecting a multi-person party. And potentially, you gotta hook up. Also, Bill tells the police that he never saw or spoke to Gina when he was at the lake house, which is the exact opposite of what Steve told them. So with everything they know so far about Steve and his past, law enforcement's curiosity is super piqued about this lake house, about what might have happened there the night Gina went missing. The police asked Bill, "Why don't you take us over to the house so we could have a look around?" and Bill agrees. So 2 officers drive out there with him, and as soon as they get inside, they see it on the carpet in the den as a bleached-out pink stain matching about where Bill said that he stepped in something wet that night. And this stain is pretty big under the trestle. Police have a bad feeling that this might have been blood. I couldn't find in my research. But when he's in the house, he does make a stunning discovery. At the foot of the stairs, he finds a gold bracelet with 2 interlocking hearts, just like the ankle Gina Hall was wearing. And the clasp is broken. Police continue to go over every single inch of the house, and as they search, they keep turning up more and more bloodstains. Not big ones like the one from the carpet, but little ones sort of scattered around both inside and outside, a lot of places that an untrained eye would miss. And they find hair, blood, and fibers on the refrigerator door smudged like someone almost had tried to clean it up. And there's also blood on the driveway in the upstairs bathroom, outside on the deck, and scattered on some stuff in the utility room. They also found blood on a chair leg on a picture on a dustpan. So something definitely happened here. Yeah, this is way more than like a couple of kids with bloody noses over a decade or two. Like it's obvious something terrible happened here. But police find something that makes the whole scene even worse, because next to the fridge, there's a golf shoe with blood and pubic hair in the cleats. Now they have a lot of evidence. But despite all this evidence, there is still no sign of Gina Hall or her body anywhere in the house. Since this is before DNA, all the labs conduce a test for blood type, and everything police have is found to be type O, just like Gina was. Days go by with more searches and more evidence collected, all pointing right at Steve early but without a body. This is still all 100% circumstantial bills. Parents get back to their lake house on July 5th. This is a week after Gina first disappeared. And here's the thing. They've been on vacation this whole time with no idea about what's been going on. So instead of coming home to their normal home, they come back to a crime scene. They're horrified, but they're instantly cooperative. And, according to court records, they're able to point out 6 distinct things that are missing from their house. A quilt, a blue towel, a striped towel, a roll of paper towels, a bath mat, and a can of bathroom cleaner. A volunteer searcher actually finds a bloody blue towel along the New River the next day that matches the one missing from the lake house, but nothing else. No bath mat, no quilt, and still no Gina. The police decide to start thinking a little outside the box. And so on July 11, 1980, they bring in a surprising new helper. Almost 2 weeks after Gina went missing, the police decided to call in a so-called superdog and his handler because he knew this dog as a big German shepherd named Harass. And he's known for having an incredible sense of smell. His handler, a guy named John Preston, is pretty well known in law enforcement circles. He's confident that they can find Gina, according to Murder PDA, after John comes to Virginia with Harass II and agrees to help the dog tracks back to Steve 3 times. 2 times with a pair of his dirty underwear to scent from and another time from the bloody towel. Basically, police got a pair of Steve's underwear to give Harass the scent, and then Harass traces that scent back to about 50 yards away from where Gina's car was found. And he doesn't stop there, though he tracks. Then Steven sent from near where Gina's car was all the way back to Steve's house. Yeah, so those were the first 2 scents from the underwear. And for that third one, police go to the Radford High School building, right across from their station, where they basically make a lineup of towels with the blue towel found by the river in there and mixed in there to see if he would find it. So they asked Harass to pick out if one has Steve's scent on it. The dog keeps following the scent from that bloody towel into the auditorium over to the police station where Steve is being interviewed. Steve keeps denying that he had anything to do with Gina's disappearance, and he won't say if he knows where she is. So all law enforcement can do is keep searching. As July wears on, searchers keep turning up more and more that tells police Gina isn't coming home. Gina's bloody clothes turn up out in the woods, under the bridge near her car, along with the other missing towel. Also bloody a shovel and another modditch about 20 feet away. Steve's mom takes one look at both the dramatic and the shovel and confirms that they're the ones that just happened to be missing from the Epperly family garage. Still, police don't think any of this is enough to arrest Steve and nail him for Gina's murder. Yeah, so they have to watch as he moves out of Radford, first to Roanoke and then out of state altogether to Columbus, Ohio. And in a strange turn of events, while Steve is in Columbus, a woman named Vicky goes missing and is found murdered. And the circumstances around Vicky's case are kind of similar to Gina Hall. According to ABC News 6, her murder is still unsolved, and though police didn't find any connection to Steve EP early at the time, in Vicky's case, it is strange and something that you'll see brought up when you dig into Gina's case. Now Steve only stays in Ohio for a couple of months before coming back to Virginia that fall. While all this is happening, the local prosecutor, and since Virginia is a commonwealth, his official title is Commonwealth Attorney of Pulaski County. But the job functions are pretty much the same as DA, but anyway, this man named Everett Shockley is starting to realize that his worst-case scenario might be coming true. All the evidence keeps going right to Steve to no one else, and Everett knows in his gut that this is their guy. So, according to Under the Trestle, that's the biggest thing the prosecutor's office is researching at this point. The current DA's team knows that they've never tried nobody case, but they have no idea if it's ever been done before and actually gotten a conviction anywhere else in the US been successful, so their research turns up on 4 nobody cases in American history that actually got a conviction with no confession, no eyewitnesses. And, of course, nobody. And none of those 4 were in Virginia. So in August of 1980, the prosecution goes to Steve and his attorney. They offer him a deal that basically, if he pleads guilty to second-degree murder and tells them where Gina's body is, he'll get 20 years, which is the maximum for second-degree murder. But if they go to trial and Steve's found guilty of first-degree murder, and he'll get 20 as the minimum. But Steve and his lawyer shut this down. They just turn the deal down flat. And already, you're looking at a case that will not only make or break your career but also has the potential to shape Virginia's legal precedent for years, right? It's going to define not only your career but your legacy. This case is a huge deal, and the burden of proof on the prosecution is so much different from a normal trial. Right again, when you don't have that body, you're not trying to prove the murder. You first have to prove that Gina's actually dead on and then prove that she's dead because Steve killed her and basically, you have to prove that he intended to kill her all because what she wouldn't have sex with him. And if the jury finds reasonable doubt on any one of those three things, he will get to walk. So what do? Do you wait until the body is found? Or do you take the gamble and move forward without it? On September 9, 1980, Steve, up early, is arrested and charged with the murder of Gina Hall, according to an article one read in the newsreader. The search for her body doesn't stop after Steve's in custody. He's got a new legal team at this point, a pair of court-appointed lawyers who start jumping through all of the hoops they can to keep this case out of court. But it's no use. And finally, the trial starts in December of 1980 in Pulaski County. Right from the start, this is a super emotional trial, in no small part because the very first person called to the stand is Diana Hall, Gina's older sister. She takes the jury through Gina's life, how beloved she was, how deep their bond as sisters ran even now, and most tellingly, she confirms how self-conscious Gina was about her scars. According to Delana, Gina got embarrassed, even wearing a bathing suit. She also identifies Gina's ankle bracelet as the one that Bill King found at the lake house. But her most damning testimony isn't about Gina herself. It's about the car you see. Delana tells the jury that she always had to fix the car seat after Gina drove, because the seat would be super close up to the steering wheel. So right, like we were talking about earlier. Exactly how tall was Steve? About 6 feet tall, definitely tall enough that he'd be squashed if he was trying to drive where Gina kept the seat 100%. He would have to push the seat back like it was when it was found. And this is just one of the circumstances that the prosecution wants the jury to think long and hard about. But it's far from the last because, on the third day of trial, Steve's friend Bill King takes the stand, and this dude drops a bombshell. Bill testifies that Steve never denied killing Gina Hall. According to another article one read, Bill tells the court that when he straight up asked Steve if he killed Gina, all Steve said is, quote, "I don't know anything about it."